Hey, how you doing? Welcome to Community Crossfire, another point of view. I'm your host, Norman Oliver. Have a dynamic show this evening. My good friend, what I call you, Pastor, Bishop, Apostle,
Whatever.
Brother Weeks.
Whatever.
You know, I mean, she kind of threw me off. You know what I mean? First of all, let me thank Wayna for hosting the show last week, and Julius Cephas for hosting the week before. We're doing a little traveling, a little busy, but I just want to thank those guys because they do a very, very good job. And first, also I want to wish everyone a happy Easter.
Yes.
Happy Easter. Before I get to Bishop Weeks, I have a few things I want to talk about because, I like to give people an overview, and I've missed a lot of stuff. What do I want to talk about? First, wow, how about the stuff that's going on in the county with all this Stoat stuff? The county executive, the new county executive, Tom Gordon, outgoing county executive now, U.S. Senator Chris Coons. That stuff is messy. I don't know if I want to talk about that. Well, I might talk about that in another show because I need some prayer, and I do have a bishop on with me. But wow, that stuff is ugly, ugly. Now you have the Department of Transportation involved, which is the state. And to Jack Markell's credit, I think he's tried to clear a lot of this stuff up. But maybe I could get Tom Gordon on, county executive, to talk about it. And also Nancy Willing, who has her own blog. Nancy Willing broke this story way before the News Journal broke it. I know a lot of people follow the News Journal, but that's what I keep telling the people in our community. Investigate some stuff on your own. Do not just depend all the time on the News Journal, WDEL, WILM, or some of the local stations. Investigate. And also, sometimes the people win. Not saying I have no idea about this. Because I talk to County Councilman Penrose Hollins once in a while, and I've talked to some other folks in the county government. So I know Pam Scott, but this stuff is really, really deep. And if you follow the paper trail, it's deep. And this is what I keep saying when we talk about economic empowerment. Sometimes in our community, we could get hung up on $2,500, $2,500, or $500, $5. And these people are playing with tens of millions of dollars. And I haven't heard Tom Wagner investigating them. You have these black folks around in our community run around with paperwork and stuff when it comes to people in our community. But these guys are playing with tens of millions of dollars. So that's that. The city of Wilmington, seems to me, I don't know, seems to me like the mayor's not playing. There's some shootings. I've never in my lifetime ever thought that the Thunder Guard Club would be shut down. Wow. I've been out of town, so I'm just catching up. The Thunder Guard Club being shut down, that's like international news. I remember going in there when I was in college. I couldn't see nothing, but it was a nice place to dance. And so you got to pray for me, man. So the mayor is being serious. That's another subject that we'll talk about another day. What else do I want to talk about? The Christina School District. The Christina School District appears to me they're bringing in the National Guards, ATF, the federal government. They bringing in the state, city, and county police for a school board meeting. Jay Street must be a bad man. I gotta have a little fun. I haven't been here in a while, so I'm just catching up on this stuff. The Christina School Board is actually bringing in security. Are you serious? Maybe I need to bring some of the school board members on in the Christina School District Superintendent, who I like. I hate to see these guys going there. Like Dr. Freeman Williams is a friend, and Jay Street is a friend. So I always hate to see that, and I don't know the real issues besides what I read. But I like to see those guys on. Also, Bishop, are you still on the Housing Authority Board?
No.
The Housing Authority Board. Let me talk about that. Herman Holloway Jr., ladies and gentlemen, has been fighting Fred Purnell since the Stone Ages. Fred Purnell probably has not returned his call in probably 35 years. Herman Holloway Jr. could be the chairman of the board sooner or later, so he don't have to call him anymore. Fred's going to have to call him. I would like to just be, because I've been on boards where you have the executive committees. I would love to just be an executive board meeting with Herman Holloway Jr., Calvin Brown's on that board now, John Bly. I think Bernadette Winston got ousted. So the Housing Authority should be interested. So you see, I'm so far behind time, so I got to catch up, Bishop, if that's okay with you. What else do I want to talk about? Okay, let me say this about Elena Deladon and University of Delaware. I'm a Delaware State College University fan. Before Delaware State University, Delaware State College, that's where I graduated from. And I said this probably like 3 or 4 months ago, that anytime University of Delaware plays Delaware State, I'm Delaware State. I can't care less what anybody say or anyone says. But the fact of the matter is, University of Delaware with Elena Deladon did some enormous things for our state. I remember her when she was a young lady, and she always carried herself with class. The fact of the matter is, she's number 5 in the history of the game of girls basketball. That's amazing. I mean, like, we really got to talk about her being one of the greatest athletes in the state of Delaware. I don't know about Connecticut, New York, Chicago, Detroit. I'm saying the state of Delaware. Her name has to be mentioned, like I said, about Stan Waterman as being the greatest coach. Because some people could transform to any era. And I don't think there's anything wrong if you go to Del Tech, Wilmington College, Wesley. This is Delaware. So I think we should support each other. And I totally support her and Monte, like I said, Monte Ross, who's a friend, unless they play in Delaware State University. And I feel, because they gave me an opportunity. But I also believe in my heart, Bishop, that we should honor that. And let me give my good friend Wayne Jefferson a shout out. I know they're having an event in Philadelphia tomorrow. And I think Reverend Bullock, they had something today down at the riverfront. So I wanted to give those guys a shout out. Also, sepia cleaners. I go to sepia cleaners all the time. You know, I knew the bishop was coming on. This guy's always sharp. So I said, I'm going to wear my jacket. I said, I'm going to wear my, and I got a tailor-made shirt on.
All right.
And tailor-made jacket, so I'm cool too. Sepia cleaners keep me clean. That's on A in Hill Street. And also, I went to Kendu's. My good friend Kendu, he sells chicken and waffles on 3rd and Poplar. If you go by the police station and make that right-hand turn and go on 3rd and Poplar, very good food. And he has some very good fish also. So did I cover everything? Also, what I want to say, we need to give a proud to Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
You know, could you imagine what that guy went through?
It's a lot of years he gave up for his country, for his countrymen, and for the world. A lot of years. Yeah. I want to honor that.
And again, Julius, thank you so very much for filling in for me. Bishop Week, welcome to the show, man.
It's good to be here, always.
Yeah, we always talk, man. But look, you have before we get into the conversation about Easter and religion and all that kind of stuff, first of all, he brought a book down. It's called Transformed. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I paid for it. He tried to give it to me free, but that's my point. When I talk about economic empowerment, we got to get away from that. Pay the money.
All right.
What is Transformed about, Bishop?
It is about changing your life. And it's actually more than change, because you can change and still be in the same place. This is progress. This is moving forward. In life, we get into ruts. We get stuck. How do I get out of it? And of course, I take a spiritual viewpoint of this, how you're able to walk through life spiritually, the things you got to do, the connection that you must make. And when you do that, you can now be in control. You can be empowered. You don't have to sit back and be on a spiritual welfare system. You can actually take power, take control over your life and your territory and move forward. And so it's talking about a life of living up to favor, power, and privilege. We all have that in our lives. We have favor, there's a certain amount of favor, there's a certain amount of authority, and there's a certain amount of privilege. But do we live at its maximum? Or are we just surviving, just getting by? And so the book talks about that whole process. Gives principles in terms of for us to live by.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
That's a good point, because you and I talk a little
Sure.
bit off the air a lot, and I come by and speak to you at your place. Where people in our community who really need this, right? Who really need to understand about transforming. And you and I talked about this even just before we got on air, that we have to get into the conversation about economic empowerment. How do we get our community to understand that? Even, Mr. Moffitt, who's a good friend of mine, he's a teacher at my office, and he and I talk about this, and he's like, Norm, maybe you shouldn't talk about this a lot, because it makes it seem like you're arrogant or something like that. But I'm serious about this. I think that until, like I'm saying, until our community start getting into those conversations, Bishop, am I off base for saying that?
No. Um, there's got to be a break. Now, first of all, I happen to believe in generational curses.
Okay.
In other words, where we allow in our family, in the rut of our family, we allow certain mindsets to take hold. And sometimes we take on the mindset of poverty.
Oh, wow.
The mindset of poverty, and it's ingrained. In other words, take for instance, when I was the chairman of the Housing Authority Board, one of the most interesting things that I learned as I sat on the board is that people will come into the Housing Authority, become a tenant of the Housing Authority with a job, and in 6 months later, they have no job. Don't want to do a job after that. After 6 months, they don't have no job. And the reason why is because now their rent is zero. So for me to get zero rent, I lose my job. That does not
It's a
make
bad mindset.
sense. It's a bad mindset. You think you're gaining here, but you're losing your income.
Because, I mean, from what I'm hearing you saying, if I could be right, because I want to
Yeah,
put words in your
sure.
mouth, sounds like people get comfortable. And what I'm saying, I'm from Southbridge.
Sure.
I grew up in Southbridge Projects. I was on welfare. My mom, you know. So, but what you're saying is that don't have to be the end. Strive to be better.
You got always got to be this word better before. There's got to be hope. There's got to be expectation. You got to look into your future and just say it's going to be better. We need examples, role models. We need to put them up. In our community, so many times, if somebody look like they're getting ahead, we pull them down. Rather than
Oh, wow. Say that one more time.
In our community, when it looks like somebody is getting ahead, we come around and we start talking about them, pull them down. We try to pull people back down to our level rather than we trying to step up to their level. We need those role models. We need to visually see it. Our young people need to visually see it. Our young people that's standing out on the corners need to see what success is. And they need to start emanating it and following it and trying to follow it as an example. So for you and I, as we talk about it on the program, I think you need to bring more examples on the program, talk about it. And when folks start seeing those examples and knowing how you can have a breakthrough and how I can now do better for my life, and rather than eliminating my income, I want more income. Someone used to say to me, I said, well, Reverend, what I'm trying to do is to avoid paying a whole lot of tax. Forget that. Let me pay as much tax as I need to pay. Make as much money as you can, pay the taxes, and go on with your life. Save, be able to bless other people. One of the mindsets, the generational curses again, is that because we know there's a lot of family members, if we get 2 cents, there's going to be some family member that's going to try to get it. So rather than getting a mindset that allows me to be able to have money and be a blessing to others, I'm fearful of folk asking me for money, so I stay broke. So when they come to me, I just say, no, I'm broke. I'm broke. That ought not to be a lifestyle where you are broke. You ought to have money in your pocket. You ought to feel comfortable with it, and you need to get to the mindset that you're able to say no. Because
let me stop. Can I stop you there?
Sure.
You know, this is interesting segue, right? If you don't mind.
Sure.
You know, I like this dialogue, and plus, you know, we're on Crossfire.
Right.
You know, what came to my mind is like the swaggers and like all these other preachers, you know, who do a good job. But they also, what's the guy, the new guy who has a lot of books out, but he talks about economic empowerment, the white guy, the younger white guy. But
yes.
I forget his name.
I'm from Houston,
yeah.
Pastor Houston, yes.
Yeah. Do you think that you're crossing the line where you talk about transforming, which I believe is great, which I think is great, as a minister, as a black minister, let me be very specific.
Sure, right.
When we talk about that, when it's done with our community, sometimes the stereotype, and you know I'm telling the truth, so let me preach. It's like, wow, black ministers shouldn't talk about economic empowerment. They shouldn't talk about how to make money. we almost should stay in the Stone Ages and sing Kumbaya and we shall overcome. And we ain't overcoming nothing until we get into this game. And I say that sarcastically, but I'm being very honest and sincere about it. What's your take on that? I was thinking about Jimmy Graham. I was, all those kind of guys.
Well, just so you know that I'm
Austin.
Joel Osteen. I'm not, so you know, I'm just not talking. On last month, we sponsored in our Interdenominational Ministers Actions Council monthly meeting, the Money School to come in and to talk about financial empowerment and how to stop changing the mindsets just of families. The Money School has done a great job in our state helping, especially single women, and giving them the layout of how to put together a budget and how to plan for the future, etc. That we need to be doing more of that through the vehicle of our church and getting this into families so they can begin family planning. So you can find out where is your money going, what you're spending it on. Maybe with some changes you could begin to set up a savings plan. Do you know anything about IRAs and retirements and investment? And so that is what prayerfully we, the vehicle of the church, can begin to do through our congregations. And it's extremely important. We need to talk about it. Again, we need to confront the generational curses, forget trying to keep us on the plantation or just doing this, or the preacher just ought to say something about that. No, we need to be able to have salvation that covers spiritually and physically, mentally, and so we cover the whole gamut. There's a big job out there. There's a lot of work for us to do. When Jesus was on earth, and today is his day, when Jesus was on earth, he just did not address the spiritual. He also addressed the physical. He healed people. He stopped in the middle of revivals and just had great healing campaigns. He stopped in the middle of revivals and had great feeding programs. Took 2 fishes and 5 loaves of bread and fed about 20,000 people. He did that. He saw about the physical needs. We need to be able to do that. I want you to note something else. When Jesus talked about poverty, he always talked about how we ought to bless those that do not have. In other words, the people that are around him, everybody that is associated with him, he already assumed that they had. And so he always said, you ought to help those that have not. You cannot be a blessing to others if you have no blessing to give.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, if you just tuned in, I'm talking to Bishop Thomas Weeks, who's a good friend. And to be perfectly honest, came in here with to have a different agenda. We were going to talk about Easter and what that meant and all that. And he brought his book down, Transformed. And we're getting into this conversation, which is dynamite. Transformed is a book that Bishop Weeks just wrote, and I'm going to read it because I love reading.
Amen.
And by the way, I paid for it. He tried to give it to me for free. And I said, no, we got to get out of that stuff. But it's interesting what you said. And, I remember, talking about Easter and all that, and we're going to get to that. I remember, like, my mother passed like 25 years ago. And I never could understand how she was able to make sure we had a clean suit on and my sisters had a nice dress. And that's economic empowerment.
Yes.
Even if you didn't have, she made us feel like we had. So I never felt like we was poor, Although, I would go to church and my line was always Happy Easter. They would never give me, I was like, why is everybody else saying like a whole sentence? And I'm getting like one line, when you go to Happy Easter. I'm like, look, I can remember that, but I was a bad kid. But I really feel so strong about this. And I'm glad you brought this, brought this book to me and you're talking about that because I think it's important. And you said something, I think Jack Markell started that money tree.
Yes.
And I talked to the governor. I said, man, I think that you would do great if you start coming into our communities and talk about finances. Because even when we graduate from college or whatever, high school, we were taught just to get a checking account.
Right.
A savings account, whatever, and maybe buy a house, maybe buy a car, whatever. But nobody talked to us about IRAs,
Right.
RAS,
Right.
Money markets, blue chips, how to invest. And when you talk about that, I think that it totally hits home with me because I'm starting to learn that. I had those same conversations with Sammy Congo. I mean, some folks understand, and I think that every minister, I might be wrong, and I don't want to step on any minister's toes, that should start talking about this kind of stuff so people could learn. Or when you sit, you go back to the Housing Authority Board 20 years from now, and you're going to have the same story. Am I right?
Yes, the same story. People caught in a certain cycle. And when public housing was originally established, it was supposed to be temporary. It was not a permanent situation. It was supposed to be a place where people came, got themselves together, and then moved on. And so if you're able to get into the housing authority, that's ought to be the mindset. I'm just here to pull myself together, and I'm out of here as fast as I can because I'm moving up the ladder.
Let me ask you a question, and I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but again, I always got to throw out this disclaimer. This is Crossfire, so I ask the tough questions. Do you think the black ministers, including you, right, that we're doing a good job of talking about these kind of issues? I think, and I said this, I think that the social issues, I remember Reverend Lavinia Starks, she would feed us when we would go over at Mount Joy Church, you know, we'd have bacon and eggs, whatever. But now I think that, this is just me speaking, I'm asking you, that the churches should play a greater role in bringing folks in. And it's almost like W.B. Du Bois talked about the talented 10th, that we should recognize those kind of talents and uplift them. Am I wrong in feeling like that? And feeling that the role of the black church should be a little bit more, or maybe more, because Dr. King talked about this kind of stuff like 100 years ago.
Right. Well,
am I right?
First, let me explain. First of all, the black church is a continuum. You know, you have the small to the very large. You have the aggressive to the very subtle. You have a continuum of churches, of leadership, of kind, and it's really up to the individual to kind of find their mode, what they want. Some folks like a laid-back church. There are those churches. There are other churches that are very aggressive. They are up front. They go there and they see programs, that lay out programs that have a continuum, and they're able to look at them and say, now this will fit me, this will fit me, this will fit me. I like this aggressiveness. And so you really got to look for that church, and the more people want it and look for that church, the more that church will then tend to meet those needs and swing. So the church kind of flow with that. I probably a little like you ought to think that the church, the leadership and the church ought to be out front of all of that, ought to be out front, and we ought to take a much more aggressive stance on a number of issues. Unfortunately, one church can't do it all. You will not be effective. You cannot do it all. Some can do more than others, but the idea of the church in a church community like here in Wilmington, Delaware, is that churches specialize. You know, we have some churches that specialize with those that are incarcerated and seeing about prison ministry. There are churches that specialize in seeing about health needs and furnishing and addressing those kinds of concerns. There are churches that specialize with youth and children and the early development, others with education. And so you have, it just depends on what your need is. You'll be able to find a church that's addressing that and worship there as well as participate. So hopefully when you bring the church together, we're doing a very good job when you look at the individual churches and their tasks and their role and what they're doing.
Let me stop you right there.
Sure.
I totally hear what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying. But in my opinion, I think the church should be a one-stop shop. I mean, am I off board? I mean, you named like 5 or 6 different things that a church should specialize in, but I think that you should do all. Okay. Is that like asking too much?
Yeah, that is asking too much. That's asking too much unless you have, you're prepared to always have very large churches.
But you have these mega churches, though.
Yeah, you have them,
I mean,
and
the
they do.
mega churches are
and
popping
they do
up
it,
more
and
than
they're
usual.
more like your what you were talking about, one stop. If you go there, it has a layout, but everybody does not like a very large church.
So my point, right? This is just me speaking. I think when I come to your church, right, and I remember coming to your church a long time ago, you know, even when I was in high school and in college, you know, I visited a lot. I think that I should get a person talk, you know, be able to talk about prison ministry, job placement, drug counseling, housing counseling, and financial literacy. Am I wrong to feel like that?
No.
I mean, and I still want to get to spirituality.
Right.
You feel me?
Right.
Because I have so much respect, and this is just me speaking. I know I'm gonna open the lines sooner or later. People look at the ministers for that kind of support.
There's a number of churches, mine also included, I think covers what you just
Right,
mentioned, and maybe a few others in terms of endeavors. We're probably the larger churches in our community, and I do not want to talk where it looks like it's negative for the smaller ones who cannot do that. I've been small, so I understand
that.
But they serve a very unique and powerful role in the continuum of the church.
But Bishop, and I'm not
Okay.
not in any way degrading
Right,
a smaller
right,
church,
right.
because I mean I come from a small church and I love smaller churches. But shoot, some people only got $2.
Right.
And some people got $200. Some people got $2,000.
Right.
So I don't think it's the size. I think it's the message. It's,
Okay.
Go ahead, I'm listening to you.
Well, again, take for instance your program here.
Okay,
Take for instance your program. You just mentioned a lot of things.
right.
Now, think about if you had to try over in a month's time
Right.
to cover all of that.
Right. And I do. And I tried to.
But you're hitting it. Do you understand? It's not
Right.
in depth. You're not setting up a money school. You're not going down
I
in
feel you.
depth. You're not talking about the IRAs. You're not talking about how to move over there.
Right.
You just hit the subject and you move on. You hit another subject.
right.
In other words, it really takes time, space, people. It takes this big mounted effort to carry out a wide a spectrum of activity, and some are just not capable of doing that. And so, again, it just goes back to the particular need of an individual as they look to the congregation. But I think if we start just talking about it, we will be able to identify churches that have certain kind of roles in our community, and they fulfill it. Ministers that have certain kind of roles, and they fulfill that. And so when we look at it as a whole, as a group, it's like going to the mall. It's like going to the mall. Every store at the mall is not Macy's,
Right.
you know. And then you have the smaller shops and the boutiques that you go to get your fine jackets and your
Well, I knew you was coming.
shirts
Well,
and-
you know, I knew you was gonna come on with your pedicures and all that good stuff. You know, let me ask you a question. You're gonna think
Sure.
I'm a speed reader, right? A few things. I'm looking at, part 3
Right.
in your booklet, right? You say a new mindset.
Right.
Let's transformation be complete, right? What do you mean by that?
Okay. When we are in the process of changing, we do not take complete control of our lives. You've been saying something very powerful, underlining a particular principle, and that is going from a state of what it's called favor to one of authority. And it's like going from welfare to now running your own business, or for biblical terms, is from the children of Israel coming out of the wilderness and now possessing the promised land. You have to pass through this era of when you were just being blessed with things and favor, and people were just giving you stuff. You can end up liking it and becoming comfortable. You could end up as a student staying at a relative's house in a particular city, and then all of a sudden say, I like this. I just come in, I can eat the food, I can sleep in bed, I don't have to pay any bills. And then your whole life will just be wasted away because you never took authority and control over your own life. And so once you have planned and prepared and set the stage to move out and move through life, you got to go through it. Let me give you this statement.
I'm listening to you.
A lot of us want the destination, but we do not want to take the journey. The destination is success. It's out there. It's success. But we realize you got to go through something to get there. And so the journey is what keeps us back here. And so in order for us to have to complete transformation, there's some death, burial, and resurrection experiences we're going to have to go through. There are some things that you had to let go and release to move on in your life.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, but I don't want to release them because some of these people make me mad.
But that's great for me because that means there's that challenge always out there. Every time I got to go here, I got to minister somewhere, I got to do something somewhere, I got to get on a plane, I got to be mindful, I got to confront that and overcome it. I could easily say, I ain't flying.
Right.
And then my life would have been reduced to a little nothing because my life is all about traveling and being about throughout the nation. So you got to confront it and you got to move on. I think that is a capsule of what most of us fear, what most of us got to confront. In the areas of our greatest success, there is this thing that you can't do anything about. That's right in the midst of it. Paul called it a thorn in his flesh. He said, if you move this thorn out of my flesh, I'll be able to do so much. And the Lord